Today, we are going to make some grass. No, I'm not in Colorado, so it's not going to be that kind of grass. It's our techniques that are so simple and sensible, your models will practically build themselves. Hello folks, it's Mad Dog Merv. Today, well, I'm at the Fort Douglas Military Museum. I'm visiting one of my favorite relics, and that is this M4 Sherman composite hull here. You know, I really like playing World of Tanks online, but, well, can't do it anymore. Today we're going to look at some of the builds that I've done for the World of Tanks in 1/35th scale, as well as some of the ones that we've already covered and talked about. And, well, unfortunately, I won't be playing World of Tanks anytime soon. So, without further ado, let's talk a little bit about the end of World of Tanks for Mad Dog Merv. About 4 years ago, I started playing World of Tanks online. My oldest son, who plays a lot of games online, had introduced me to this game. When I was a kid, I used to pretend my tanks were shooting at each other. I'd build these model tanks. And, well, now I had the opportunity to virtually do it on this online gaming. And it was a whole lot of fun. But they no longer support the Xbox 360 platform, and that's what I have. So I'm not going to upgrade, so I'm just out of luck for a while. Let's look at some of the builds I've done for this game. I thought it would be fun to build some of the tanks from this game. And here is, well, my favorite subjects are the tank destroyers. And here's a 128 millimeter gun. It's a Pack 44 on a Krupp chassis, you know, similar to what you'd have in a Hetzer. And I bought this a couple of years ago, Christmas time, built it. I think it turned out pretty darn well, but in the game, this 128 millimeter gun packs a real wallop. And I absolutely love the tank destroyers. They're usually pretty quick, they're deadly accurate, but they don't take a lot of damage. Just one or two hits and poof, they're gone. Here's another fun one that I built, the Dicker Max, or the D-Max. This has got a big old nasty 88 millimeter gun on it. And, well, this is one that I had a lot of fun with in the game as well. And one of my favorite German tanks, well, is the Panther II. And a few years ago, I built this, custom built this rendition of a Panther II. I did not use the resin kit. I actually did my own, you know, complete scratch built version of it. Another fun one that I like playing with, 128 millimeter gun on that, as well with this, the hunting tiger as they call it, or the Yog tiger. This is takes a lot of damage, but man, this thing can really dish it out. This is one that I built a few years ago and painted in this tiger stripe scheme. The U.S. tanks, well, really my favorite to play with is this particular one here. The US T-40, also known as an M9. This was an actual experimental tank where they took the 3-inch gun, the 76 millimeter, and put it on a M3 chassis without the top on it. And here's my rendition of it. Kind of painted it up in a Pacific War scheme and had it deployed out into the Pacific in my world. But it's one of my favorites to play with in World of Tanks, a level 4 tank. And then level 5, well, you've got the M10 tank destroyer. And this one I've wreaked a lot of havoc with. Actually got 10 kills in one game with an M10 tank destroyer. And that 76 millimeter gun that packs a real wallop. A while back, they came out with the British version, the Achilles, and I built a model of that as well. Moving up the food chain to a level 6 US tank, you've got the M18 Hellcat. And this is the real deal here. However, in the game, you could get it with a 90 millimeter gun, which was kind of an experimental thing that they did. Again, a wonderful tank, quick, fast, and very, very. Next up the food chain on a tier 7 is the T25AT, which this was one of the funnest builds that I did. I actually based this on a Duster chassis and then built the casemate for it, added that big old long T15, I think it's an A2 gun. very similar to what was on the Super Pershing. Anyway, this is a really fun build, and in World of Tanks, it's actually a fun tank to play with. Up from that, of course, is the T-28, this big old bad boy of a really low-lying, heavy hitter, super tank that, well, there was a couple of them developed, but they came out too late and they were just too slow to be a part of the war. And then, of course, the last in the U.S. And a tank series was the T-30. And I built this one here, kind of representing the end of the war. That's about the time that it came out. And this has got that same big gun as the T-28 on it. So I'm not much of a light tank guy, but I've got to tell you, these monster tanks that they came out with during Halloween were a lot of fun. And this one in particular, the Hole and Hound. Well, the Walker Bulldog tank with a 90mm gun on it. Oh, heck yeah. I had to build one of those. So here's my version of it. I think it turned out pretty close to the one in the game, and it was just a fun build to do. Run across these on the battlefield from time to time, and they're just real tigers. The actual M41, well, of course, I built one of those, representing the one that I would play with in the game. The light tanks are really designed to get in and do scouting work, and you can get back and hit artillery pretty quick with them, but just really not my cup of tea. Medium tanks, however, they're a lot of fun, and you can see here's one of the Panthers that I've got. I thought I'd do a video follow-up to Saturday's program from MRS Hobby and just kind of show how the Panther turned out that we were working on at MRS. And you can see I now have the side skirts on. You can see how the mudding actually turned out when it's dry there on the front and on the top and on the back deck. And you can kind of see how the wheels turned out on this side. And this is the side we worked on at MRS on Saturday. And so you can kind of see how that went. You really can't see down inside, but if you can, a little bit there, you can see it's kind of a shiny, glossy mud. And you can see how it dried on the tracks. It definitely, with that gloss that we'd talked about. So it kind of gives us that wet mud appearance. Yeah, so there you go. The finished product on our mudding job of the Panther. So a couple years ago at Christmas time, we did a build on a Panther 2 kit that I had from Dragon. I used an urban camouflage that they use in the game, and well, I thought this one turned out pretty good. This was a very fun build. Go back and check that out if you'd like to see that. Also, there was a Panther F with one of them big, long, L100 barrels on it that I did a build on, and that was another real fun build to do. And it's been a fun tank to play with in the game as well. So some of the other tanks that I've done is this little, what do they call it, a Stug 3, Mark 3 Stug that I painted up, and although I only used it like once in the game and moved on to the next level, it was okay. But there's this this little contraption here, which is a Mark 4 with a small term on it. And I never did buy one of these in the game, but I did build this particular kit of that. And this as well. This is that Panther. So it's like a Mark 4-5 is what it's called in the game. But it's a Mark 4 turret on a Panther chassis. Very quick and very great scouting tank. In the last couple of years, I kind of got into some of the Japanese tanks, particularly because of the movie The Pacific. And I wanted to build this one here, which was representative of one from that movie. But I've since played with one very similar to that in the World of Tanks game. And again, this one, which is the next level up, upgrade from that in World of Tanks. And by the way, those Japanese tanks in World of Tanks just really sucked. Now the level 5 heavy tank that the Japanese had was really nice. But anyway, so this was a fun build. This one, go back and again check the World of Tanks builds that I've got on the channel here. This is the T-3488. I tried to make this look as much as possible like the one in the game. Again, it's a T-34 that's been upgraded with a German 88mm gun. Very, very potent on the battlefield, and a really fun build to do. Speaking of fun builds, the E50. Now, I never had one of these in the game, but I thought it was kind of a neat looking tank, and well, I had an E50. Decided to give it this this striped camo. It was a good opportunity, I'll tell you what, with some of these things, to do some of these camos that are kind of a little bit different and just experiment with them a bit. So in the US line, well, there was the Pacific paint scheme that that they had on here. So I tried that on an M4 Sherman. Really enjoyed that, and I thought, hey, I'm going to try that out on a model. And so here's a model of one that I did for the Pacific, for my Pacific Sherman builds, which I believe is here on the channel as well. Like playing with Shermans, especially the 75s, but also they do have the 76 upgunned Sherman, and this thing is deadly accurate, level 5 tank, and I really enjoy playing with this one a lot. This medium tank, it's good maneuverability all around, just a great tank. But then they also have the British Firefly. And so here's a British Firefly that I had actually built, similar to one that I had played with in the game. Really, those level 5 tanks are my favorite to play with. But this is a fun one here. This is the, well, this is the Pershing. This is actually the Super Pershing. This is the first Super Pershing. This is a model of the one, the, what is it, the T-26 E1 or E3, whatever it was. This is the one that actually saw combat in Europe and actually had a couple of kills there in Europe in World War II. There was one of those. And here's the Freedom tank. Now, I've never bought one of these because it takes extra money to buy it, and I just wasn't going to do that. But to play against these things, these are absolutely awesome with the upgraded armor, and I think it's one of the most beautiful tanks in the game World of Tanks. And this was a fun build. And so far, it's been my favorite build in World of Tanks models that I've done. Here's the actual Super Pershing, just regular old Super Pershing. And with that upgraded gun, it definitely has some hitting power. This would have been a fun tank if we'd have been able to get this online during World War II. Here's an M48, kind of the top dog in medium tanks in the World of Tanks game, level 10. But the M48 that built here for the Vietnam War era, Marine Corps one, and you can see it, this again was a lot of fun, this build here. We used an old Tamiya kit for that. US heavy tanks are something I also like to play with a lot. So here is an M6. This has got the 90mm gun on it. This is a level 6 tank. I also have been working on a T1, which is a level 5 tank, and I absolutely love playing with that. Takes a lot of damage, has good hitting power, pretty maneuverable. These were, again, real fun builds to do. You can go back and check that out from December a couple years ago. But then there's this one, the M6A2E1, known as the Mutant 6. And basically they took an experimental turret for a T-29 and put it on an M6 and tested a bunch of things out. So, of course, I have to build one of these. One of these days we'll have this on the channel, but you can see I've been working on the turret of this particular tank. Now we move up to American T-29, and this TACOM kit here, the E3 version with the periscopes there on the side. Absolutely loved this build. Love the look of this tank, the paint job of it. This was a whole lot of fun. Then we got the T-32, which is based on the Pershing, kind of an extended Pershing. We did this build not too long ago. Go back and check that out in our World of Tanks builds. So, in fact, this whole playlist of World of Tanks ought to be fun for you to watch. T-34, the last of that incarnation there. Again, very similar to the T-29, just a much different gun. And I tried to make this one look like it would be something that was used in Korea, although it wasn't. But hey, we're talking about tanks that were kind of experimental anyway. Definitely a fun tank. So one of the level 7 heavy tanks that I actually love is the German Tiger. It takes a while to get there. You go through a lot of other tanks that aren't worth a crap, but I got to tell you, once you get this thing and get it totally upgraded, this thing is freaking awesome. Absolutely love playing with it. And you can see here I did 007, which was the tank that supposedly Michael Whitman was killed in. Here's another view of it, kind of a fun build. I think they got a couple of different Tigers that you can play with. I just played with the regular old Tiger in the game. And the upgrade from the Tiger, of course, is the Tiger 2, or the King Tiger. And I did this particular build, again, from I believe this one was a Tamiya kit as well, that I just upgraded a little bit, kind of made it into more of a late King Tiger, but a lot of fun to play with in the game World of Tanks. Now moving along to, well, the artillery pieces. So I played with a bunch of different artillery pieces, and I like playing with them, but there's this GW Tiger that's based on like the E100 chassis. It's got a big old hairy, like 168 millimeter gun, some nasty gun. And this is in the top of the, I think it's a tier 8 or tier 9, something like that, artillery piece in the German line. And absolutely enjoy playing with this. But here I built a model of it more of as like a direct fire, more of an anti-tank, if you will, version. What if we had gone into 1946 or late 1945 with the war, and these had actually been deployed? So that's kind of what I did here with this build. And finally, the artillery piece that I probably used the most, I think it's level 5, this US piece here. Not terribly accurate, but again, very mobile, and it's not a bad piece. Pretty quick reload time, and that is the M7 Priest. And I built this one here kind of as an example of something from the Battle of the Bulge. That's why I got it here in the snow. So anyway, this isn't the end of my World of Tanks builds, far from it. I still have several kits I want to build, several other tanks I want to modify for the World of Tanks game, so never fear, we are still going to have the series. It's just I'm not going to be playing the game anymore because I don't have access. Hey, thanks for joining us, folks.